What's up, fish gang? Welcome back to Akita Aquatics. This is a follow-up video to the last one in which I said that I would give you a bit of a species profile or the lowdown on my new fish. So we're starting today's video with the samurai gourami, or I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to have a go, Sphyrichthys violanti. Now, from what I'm aware, they get their name from the coloured stripes that are pronounced as like black slashes, especially on the females. They also have red finnage and then a greenish blue tint to them, where the males tend to stay brown, but they can have red fins also with white accents. One interesting thing about this fish is that the female is actually the dominant one between the two genders, and she is the one that gains the more dominant and exuberant colours, where the male does not, compared to most other gourami species in which obviously the male is the more dominant and displays the more pronounced colours. What this means for the fish is that the female, the main dominant female, will kind of like order around the rest of the tank. So she might order around obviously the males, but also the other females in the tank. They've also been known to create a sort of pecking order when it comes to feeding time. I've noticed this with my four, in which she will obviously defend a lot of the food for herself before she will let the others eat. So it's worth noting that you should make sure that obviously you're putting enough food in for each one of them to get enough to eat. Despite that, I wouldn't consider these fish to be aggressive. Definitely not in the way that chocolate gouramis can be very relentless over defending certain territories. Samurai gourami seem to be much more timid. They still like to have their own territories and places, but I find there is less aggression happening within the aquarium. Now, these fish are suitable for black water setups and anybody wanting to get into that part of the hobby. By that it means that they are almost reflecting the small river basins that they come from in Borneo. So to do that, you've got to lower your pH down as low as you can. In some cases in the wild, it's been as low as 4 or 3. And to put that into perspective, a Coca-Cola drink is 2.7 on the pH scale. So you've really got to try hard to buffer your water down. Now, the ways I've had the most success with this is by using obviously RO water first of all, because RO water is much more susceptible to changes in pH due to its low conductivity and TDS. It means that the buffers can be applied much more effectively. Next, I try to use natural things in the aquarium, botanicals, catappa leaves, jack leaves, banana leaves, anything natural. I don't like using chemicals because chemicals eventually run out and then the water creeps back up. Last but not least, you're looking at things like substrate. So using fluval stratum, aqua soil tends to keep it down so much. I know that many people have success using different types of sphagnum moss and peat moss into their filters and external filters in order to keep that buffering down constantly. And I'm no expert by any means. At the moment I can get my pH down to as low as 5.5, which still isn't perfectly ideal, but I'm working and I'm learning constantly how to improve. Now, it goes without saying that obviously ammonia, nitrites and nitrates should be as low to 0 as you possibly can to give these guys the best chance, because their immune system is going to be affected in those lower pH areas. In terms of GH and KH, you want to get both of those as close as you can to 0. Definitely KH should be 0. The GH 1 to 4. My GH is currently sitting at 2. My KH is at 0. And in terms of temperature, try and keep these guys at a stable 28 degrees. 26 to 28 is fine, but the major thing is to keep the temperature stable. Now, in terms of breeding, obviously I haven't had them that long to have much success with them, but what I do know is that because of the sexual dimorphism, the female will obviously display colours when she is ready to mate with the male. What is interesting is, unlike most of the gouramis from the Trichogaster family, these are maternal mouth brooders. So in essence, their breeding is much more like, dwarf cichlids, in that the male ends up mouth brooding the fry. Now, one of the biggest issues I faced when I first got these guys was feeding. They wouldn't accept anything unless it was live food. I did eventually wean them off it and onto frozen food, They have a particular liking for bloodworm, so I would tend to buy in live bloodworm and then mix it with some obviously frozen dead bloodworm, and eventually they started to take it. One big part of the success was actually using the Galaxy Rasboras as almost like dither fish. So I found that when they saw those eating, they were more readily able to take the food and to try the food. So I did find these had a liking for brine shrimp, glassworm, and their personal favourite is bloodworm. I was really shocked that they weren't that bothered about Daphnia, because that seems to be a pure favourite for most gourami species, but not with these. So my final thoughts on the samurai gourami. They are super interesting, full of character, and just so engaging to sit and watch. And that's what fish keeping should be about. Not about the colour or fancy tales, about what's interesting to watch, because they're there in your aquarium for you. So once again, thank you for listening, thank you for watching. If you're new here, like and subscribe, and if you want to leave a comment or ask a question, feel free, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Cheers guys.